are live. So, welcome to episode 235.
Has it been
American Werewolf of New Jersey. I am the American Werewolf. In the house tonight, we've got Michael joining us, returning from his initial appearance when we covered William Friedkin's The Devil and Father Remorse. Thank you for joining us again.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, man, good to have you on board. And we've got Nefarious, still using the network computer. Oh, no, sorry about that.
I'm still working still using the work computer. Shush.
Yeah. Gotcha. I still have this thing that I got when I first started this channel. I bought a refurbished HP. It's been serving me well all this time. I mean, I bought some things here and there, but I don't game or anything like that, and it live streams, and the Wi-Fi is fast enough, and I got, all the audio stuff that I need. So, yeah, why the hell not? Maybe someday I'll upgrade, but I almost feel bad about betraying the older girl who's served me so faithfully, now going into her fourth year.
There you go. My tower took a dump, so it's in the shop.
Gotcha.
My Apple laptop has been alive for 14 years and going strong.
Good
Apple
Lord.
is amazing, just an amazing quality.
Okay. All right.
It messes up. Some things like won't update, like Safari's done. I can only use Google Chrome. Some things are a little wonky, but it's amazing. It's still alive 14 years.
All right. Our ruminations about tech aside, this is what I'm terming, giving the term Grouchy Old Catholics presents. And we are looking at Cary Solomon and Chuck Konzelman's Nefarious. So if you guys are ready to go, shall we get it going?
Let's do it.
Boogie Woogie. So the Grouchy Old Catholics, or the new Grouchy Old Catholics, kind of subheading for the show, probably will lean more towards content that is sort of in faith-based wheelhouse. Now, we were here to talk about Friedkin's The Devil and Father Remorse, and, I didn't really think of it at that time. It was just something we discussed, and then Mike happened to be there in the chat, and we invited him in, and the conversation sort of took off from there. But then it sort of becomes something that from time to time I'd like to get back to, where we can discuss, not necessarily even horror movies. In fact, I want to talk to you guys. I have some potential interviews lined up where I'd like to have you guys on board to join me for that. So that'd be cool. But this movie was released last year, and we're talking about Nefarious, and I kept hearing all this rave critical review about it, that it was this faith-based possession film, and I didn't know what that would look like. It had Sean Patrick Flannery. I've always been a fan, going back to Boondock Saints and, that kind of stuff. So I was looking forward to it. It had an extremely limited theatrical release, and I imagine that probably a lot of faith-based films do. You're just not getting those big budgets, those big marketing pushes that like the Universals and the Foxes and 20th Centuries, whatever, are getting nowadays. It had limited theatrical release, but it like many films nowadays, it wasn't long for the cinema, and it wasn't long until it hit video on demand. And I think almost the same day that it dropped, I purchased it or rented it on video on demand. I was very impressed by what I saw. It was unlike anything that I didn't know what to expect. I didn't expect that. I thought it was, before I get into it, I'm going to go around with you guys and ask just, some cursory bullet points, what you thought of the movie. Michael, Dr. James there, what did you think of Nefarious?
It's tough. It's tough to give bullet points, I have to say, because there's a lot of different rabbit holes I want to jump down.
Well, what we typically do is I'll just have people give a cursory sort of summary of what they thought, and then we'll start to dive into the deets.
So, summary of what I thought is, at first, I did not know this was a faith-based horror film or a Christian horror film, and I saw the art on the title and said, okay, this is some kind of demonic horror film. Okay, I'm in. And then about 10 minutes in, I said to myself, wait a minute. It sounds like evangelical pastors wrote everything that's coming out of the demon's mouth. So to tell you the truth, it was very interesting content. The theology was very interesting, but it was tailored for a evangelical audience. And there's reasons that I can get into that their tradition really likes stuff right on the nose, no subtlety, a dichotomy, light and darkness. You shouldn't walk away from talking with the demon saying, oh, that really reinforces my faith. Everything I thought about my traditional Christian faith, you really would be so confused, so doubtful, so dark. And you see other demon movies where you walk away with that sort of thing, which would be more realistic. But once you realize that, this is the genre, this is their audience, and you're just forgive that, and you're okay with that, you can really begin to kind of go along with the theology and some of the very big and interesting, deep ideas that it posits.
Okay. Valerius, what do you got there from your network computer?
I enjoyed it. I'm glad you pointed it out. That's a movie that I knew had come out, and I had a little bit of interest in it. I saw all the clips that were being passed around in the.
I'll be back in 30 seconds. Just keep talking.
All right, in the sort of right-wing blogosphere, talk radio world, and they looked interesting, and it was mostly centered around the subplot of the abortion. But I saw the clips and thought the acting was great. It came and went. I have a problem with this new spate of faith-based movies that are coming out from independent studios, where they're like, oh, we're going to change the culture. We're going to bring, faith to the culture. And then they make these movies, they take these donations from people, make these movies, and then the movies just sit behind a paywall. And it's not really making it out into the culture. They're sort of sitting there being consumed by, preaching to the choir. So I was really psyched that Mike told me that the movie wound up on Tubi, which is a great free service with a lot of high quality horror stuff. So I was really happy to watch it. And it was a really, really intense watch because I got sucked into it, and I enjoyed it a lot. I do have a couple problems with it, but for the most part, I would give it a thumbs up. Yeah, it was a good watch. So thank you, Mike.
I thought it was much more of an intellectual read than a spectacle kind of thing. You kind of got, and I think I said this to you guys before, you sort of, at least according to the story, got into the mentality of the demonic instead of the spinning heads and the pea soup. Yeah. That kind of thing, which I appreciated. It was interesting to me that basically it's just two people. It's just two people sitting across from each other at a table. There's no flashing lights and, yelling and holy waters flying everywhere. This sort of thing, but it was very good at capturing atmosphere. It was a very tense kind of film. You're kind of hanging on the edge of your seat. You don't know exactly where it's going to go. I ended up purchasing a copy, which is what I went to grab real quick because I had just watched it before we went on. Although I've seen it maybe once or twice before. It's not one of those ones you watch, pop in every day or sort of thing. But I enjoyed it very much. As much as I've enjoyed any of the, sort of religious horror films that have risen up in the past 5 or 10 years, as much as any of those. It was interesting. It was interesting. I should say that what I'm going to miss most about physical media when they eventually phase it out, and it seems like they're moving in that direction.
They still have physical media? I thought that was already phased out.
Yeah. Well, Thank you for making my point. But it's going to be like the special features options that are on the Blu-rays and the DVDs and things like that. And there was a 25-minute document. There's a whole roster of special features on this Blu-ray. And there was a 25-minute sort of documentary about what the filmmakers claim was prolonged and extensive and very intense spiritual attack that they said that they underwent making this film. I listed these bullet points. It started sort of in the COVID pandemic, where they had a sort of let's get it started kind of party, because the people at the top were all very devout. And they had like a barbecue, and everybody's just kind of holding hands and dancing and having a good time, and not realizing that they were passing COVID to each other. One of the like deathly ill kind of COVID, one of the guys was about to go on the ventilator, and if you know what happens, during COVID when you went on the ventilator, it was that bad. He said, eventually they told him, you're going to have to start breathing, like stand up and start walking, or we're going to have to put you on this ventilator, and we don't think you're going to make it. They were targeted by, it was a non-union production. The unions then sort of flipped the people that were non-unions, and then that shut the production down for, I guess, the better part of a week. The consultant exorcist that they had on board, who is a Catholic exorcist, apparently had some sort of emergency appendectomy. The doctor said that when they finally, he celebrated the mass, not feeling too well, and then all of a sudden it just went into the red. The doctor said that when they cut him open to remove his appendix, apparently his appendix literally exploded. They said he was seconds away from dying. They filmed this in Oklahoma on a set. 90-mile-an-hour winds during the part where Sean Patrick Flannery's character is talking about how the devil operates, creating these horrific noises that basically drowned out the entire recording. This also took place over a Christmas holiday. They went to have a party at the director's home, where he's very much into Christmas. He had a nativity scene. Different, I think they were Catholic. He had a Catholic altar there, different things he had set up. Apparently some sort of feral animal broke into the house that they never saw, destroyed only the religious materials. The Santa Clauses were standing, so on and so forth. Nativity scene destroyed. Statues of Jesus were destroyed. Urinated on the altar cloth, and just created all kinds of awful things. 8 near-fatal accidents in 13 days. Post-production, the building where the post-production material was being held in Los Angeles, a storm came along and destroyed only that building. Only two production, I don't know what you call it. Only 2 things that were in post-production were there. That was that movie and the post-production for 1 season of The Chosen. Father Carlos Martins appeared on the set and actually had to perform an exorcism because electronics were crashing everywhere. Hard drives of interviews with the father. Newsweek interviews. They finally got some kind of big publication that was interested in them. Newsweek. The electronic recordings of the interviews crashed 3 times. email interviews would not send. For some reason, they said that they were at a cafe. Finally, they were like, look, just email us the questions. We'll email them back. The one guy is working on his computer, sending emails left and right for someone. That particular email would not send. One of the guys came down with a bacterial MRSA infection, which is like something they have to cut out of you without anesthesia. They said that they were always delivered from these things, but all of these things happened during the course of production and post-production, which they interpreted as spiritual attack. So there was about a 25-minute doc on that.
Wow.
But yeah, it's quite a story.
That's the kind of stuff that they talk about in The Exorcist. Was plagued with accidents like that, and Last Temptation of Christ was plagued by that, and The Passion, of course, another one that was plagued with accidents and weird, mysterious goings on.
Yeah, it's never exactly like you would think it would be from some sort of movie, but that's what they say that they underwent over the course of a limited amount of time. So they were under the impression that this movie was frowned upon by by certain dark forces, so on and so forth. But the concept of the film itself is quite interesting in that you have a psychiatrist who visits an inmate who is scheduled to be executed that day to evaluate whether he is competent to stand for that execution, only to find out that character, whose name is Edward Wayne Brady, played by Sean Patrick Flannery, claims to be a demon inhabiting the body of this person who is about to be executed. And it's basically a dialogue film, which is a lot different than what I thought it was going to be. And I just thought that they both gave a fantastic performance. That's basically the movie right there. It's two men sitting across from each other, sort of having this verbal contest, this verbal jousting competition. Who's in charge, who's going to do what. There's a lot more to it, but that's the basic premise of the film. Mike, you want to get in there?
Yeah, as you mentioned, Mike, I also liked the psychological dialogue-driven aspects to it, and I couldn't help but want it to be more that way. I think of a great movie called Sleuth with Laurence Olivier and Michael Caine, and the entire movie's just two people. And I kept on thinking, well, you really don't need this warden. You don't really need a lot of this outside stuff at all. It might have even been stronger and even really more tense if it was really, really dialogue driven and pushed aside. But again, I think, they didn't want to really go over the top with more of an intellectual, psychological stuff, because I think they really wanted to tailor this film to Christian teenagers, Christian families when the small kids go to bed, and they really had to be aware of that too. It couldn't be too much, it couldn't be too extreme. It couldn't be, they had to kind of make it what you would expect from a Christian thriller. And I think it's challenging, and it's interesting that you say that they wanted to push it out to the main audience, but it never gets there, because these things are challenging. They rely on, I can imagine they would rely on Christian groups to watch this film, to buy this film, to support this film, and that whole network of support. And there's a lot of diversity in Christian groups that they have to. If it's too edgy, then you have pastors condemning it. Then that's going to bite you in the foot. So I think it's really a tough thing. It's a challenging thing to do, to make a movie like this and get it beyond their own subculture.
That is a real tightrope to walk, but I think they did it very well. This is my favorite type of film. Any sort of drawing room type discussion movie, super dialogue driven. If the performances are great, the movie's going to pull you in, and you can cover a lot of ground without having to film everything. I thought this movie did it really, really well. They covered a lot of things that they were a little obvious, but it was was discussion points that if it was played out in a larger film scenario, it would seem corny. Where in this sort of talking back and forth, they could get to the point without having to play it out. I thought that was really smart of them.
Wait, what do you mean by that? That first part of what you said?
If we saw, let's take the psychiatrist. If we saw him interacting with his girlfriend, and
okay,
they're having the fight about, should she have the abortion, that would come across as corny to me. But because it's just him and the demon talking about it, you're engaging the imagination, and it becomes a little bit. It's like in the horror movies that we watch, when the death and the gore happens off screen and your brain fills in the details. Same thing. If they had played it out, it would have seemed corny. But because they didn't, it got intense with just the dialogue.
There were also some interesting shots here. Like, I mean, this is the first time I watched it for the purposes of a review. And like I said, maybe the third time I watched it. I mean, even when the doctor is pulling up to the prison, there's this interesting shot. I don't know if anybody saw it, but they've got all the razor wire on top of the wall, obviously, to prevent escape. But there's this little tiny bird, and it's just this image of the bird. He's not really trapped because the bird can move in and out of razor wire, but it sort of gives you that impression, that the real person, the real Edward Wayne Brady, is sort of trapped. By these demonic forces, by the nefarious character, by the nefarious demon that is, sort of holding him prisoner and making him suffer.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that the demon seems to reveal, and we never get this in your typical possession film, he's revealing that he has a plan. That there's this long-term plan that he has. And in this case, it's getting rid of the first psychiatrist, making him kill himself, to have this man come forward, the doctor. Oh God, I forget his name off the top of my head. Dr. James Martin. Dr. James Martin. Thank you. Dr. James Martin appeared there because he wants him to become his apostle, his sort of dark demonic apostle, to record, his testimony of sorts. So, that there is, on the dark side, this sort of dark plan, that there is a reason for all of these things that sort of happen that always get questioned in your stereotypical possession movie. Why is this happening? So on and so forth. It's left for the heroes to speculate, so on. And here, it's just clearly laid out because it's all dialogue. There is no action. There is no exorcism that usually comes, halfway through. It's usually the second half of every typical possession movie. Here, there's just a plan. It's already been laid out. You are going to do what I, say you're going to do because, what choice do you really have? I'm like 1,000 times smarter than you. A million, maybe, I don't know how old I am. This is, child's play for me. Okay. Well, thanks. Good night. All right. Have a good night. And, it's been good seeing you. You all take care. All right.
You are right. That's something that's lacking in a lot of horror movies themselves, but also the ones that take place in the possession world and the spiritual world, where a lot of times the evil spirit is just there for jump scares, and it's not really explained what they're up to, what they're planning, why they're doing this. And that was something that this film filled in detail.
So I'm coming at this from a little bit different perspective, because you guys are really thinking about this compared to other horror films. I'm taking from what I know about demons and demonology and kind of bringing it towards my engagement with the film. And what you said, I completely agree with. And that was a little bit of a turnoff for me, was the expository and the demon saying that. But, for me to say, beyond, maybe it worked for this film, but when you look into exorcisms and and really what's going on here. The idea of a demon to be so forthcoming and
Yeah.
to really give you his plan. It might have made for a good film, but just to
Right.
note that it would be something, people who claim to have exorcised demons or have encountered demons would be something very, very different. The
Yeah.
demon is always lying, always has a scheme, is never going to give you the satisfaction of knowing anything, is not going to sit down and really drop all this theology. But some things they did very, very well. Um, his calmness, his intellectualism, his cockiness, and you really felt this sort of frustration that it's been said that demons have, because we're like children compared to them. Imagine you're at war with children, and it's very frustrating to deal with them. But yet there's some higher power that keeps on giving them guns that only children can use. So they have this confidence and this arrogance, and this deep frustration and hate. So I think they did that well. One more thing, which would be when they really show the person he's possessing struggling.
Yeah.
And I think they kind of missed something there as well. Maybe it made for a more simplified movie, but it's interesting to note that the demonic possession really takes place really with the willingness of the individual most of the time.
Yeah.
And you can really liken that more to a drug addict, right? They say they're suffering, they want to stop, but they're really full of crap, right? They're
Mhm.
really consenting. I mean, their free will's been damaged in that. Or even more better, I think, like a maso sex addict, that person who really enjoys this type of abuse, this type of torture. And they might say, oh, please stop, but there's really a deep enjoyment of this sort of masochistic sexual pleasure that's going on. So that's just interesting to throw into the conversation.
Well, yeah, it does address that. The one of the times when the possessed surfaces, or the demon says, I started with him as a child with a series of small yeses, and the yeses got more and more and more and deeper and deeper and deeper. Which, is basically, sin. But as a Catholic, that you have this tool where you can be forgiven and get up again and again and again. But apparently, the character didn't have that in his life, that he had no religious background, so he didn't know what repentance is, and he just got pulled deeper and deeper and deeper into being possessed by this demon.
He mentions that the lack of baptism is a great advantage to getting started on someone, and it was my impression that I think you're right about that, Mike. But I think also, at the point that we joined the story, this is far beyond anything that anyone would enjoy. It's kind of like a rat in a trap. You see the piece of cheese. I don't know if this is a bad analogy, but I mean, you're trapped, and there's nothing enjoyable about this particular level because, it's kind of an illusion. And then when you figure out what the reality is, you're like, holy this is, get me the hell out of here. That kind of thing. I thought it was interesting that they couldn't say Jesus' name. He had to call him the carpenter. That you never really hear in your like, again, I'm approaching it from a movie's perspective. The prediction of the 3 murders that the doctor is going to commit that particular day, and then the way that it sort of folds out, and you realize that Dr. James Martin is morally compromised, shall we say. He's made some pretty bad decisions. In a spectrum, is he Hannibal Lecter? No. He's a guy that, has a respectable job, and he has a girlfriend, and, he's here, he seems, sort of like an empathetic character. He has a great deal of, concern to, make sure he's doing a good job. He's not here to sign off so someone could just be executed and he can go home. That sort of thing. He seems invested in his job. But then when we dig beneath the surface, we find out, one, he may have been complicit in his mother's own euthanasia.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot of theological substance with the dialogue. You know, the prophecies, the three, the carpenter refusing to say the name of Jesus, talking about names and what's important in names. I mean, it's very rich with a lot of substance that you point out.
Well, I mean, there's that, you know, and even like he said, you know, my mother was suffering. There was nothing she was going to be able to do to recover, so on and so forth. But then the demon throws in, well, the fact that she had $6.3 million waiting for you after she died probably didn't, you know, you know, he threw that little piece in, and it just makes you start to, you're like, oh, okay. You know, there's 7 figures for this guy once his mother dies. So yeah, maybe he is just pushed a little bit in the direction of, you know, letting his mom just sort of, you know, off herself, so to speak.
Well, he's sort of set up in the way that, like, he's a typical, or at least a typical atheist American in the 21st century would be thinking. You know, it's just he's set up to be just an average dude. And at this point, you know, average dudes are morally compromised. You know, euthanasia, it's just a common thing, at least on that side of thinking. The abortion is just a common thing on that way of, on that side of thinking. So he's just.
I don't want to get into the abortion thing just yet, but yeah, I see what you're saying.
Right, but he's set up as just a typical guy. He's not set up as this evil character. Where if you're watching this and you happen to be an atheist, you might be on his side. You'd be like, yeah, it makes sense. You know, that's sort of how he was set up.
That's kind of the point, though. That's kind of the point, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You know, you think that you're on good ground, but you're really not. You know, you're really, really not.
Yeah.
You know, you're leaning into almost sort of kind of, by the time we get to the second murder, we're kind of leaning into piece of crap. You know, we're leaning into that. But before we get into that, it was interesting where, they start to talk about the process. You know, start out when you're very young. Oh, well, you know, no one even noticed. You know, maybe just a mischievous little kid. You know, these sorts of things. You know, maybe stealing a little money out of your parents' purse or your dad's wallet here. You know, or, you know, being mean or, you know, lying about somebody there. That there are always, you know, these sort of influences that are, you know, influencers that are always watching, you know, and looking for a chance to, you know, sort of push you one step further in the wrong direction. You know, I thought that was interesting. Here's something for both of you. What did you think of Father Lewis?
Well, I kind of got the vibe that he was an Episcopalian. At least I was hoping it was. But also, you know, the father came with the Jesuit vibe of everything is a metaphor and nothing is really what we say it is. And
we had the rainbow stole, so you know.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little weak. I mean, I know what they were trying to do, but I was sitting there like, come on, the priest could do something. But I guess they're just trying to say like. Modern clergy who do not actually believe in the demonic and spirits and want to intellectualize everything and turn it into a metaphor, you know, that's, you know, they're wrong. They're weak and they're going to do nothing to help. Like the demon was scared. Oh shit, there's a priest coming, until he talked to him and he's laughing. He's like, oh, this guy is nothing. He's no threat at all, and he's laughing at him.
I very much agree. That's one of these sections that's a bit on the nose, but some things that I really liked is the initial fear that he had. And that was interesting. The panic because of the office, no matter whether or not the priest believed or not, that initial panic and then the realization that he can sneak his way out of this. And then, no, we're done. Thank you. That was interesting, but again, a bit on the nose. I think that's what the movie addressed a lot with, the typical atheist and then the typical representation of the believer that doesn't believe. And that's really something I'd like to point out too, even with this demonic movie, that, the majority, we know the majority of first world Christians, especially upper and middle class Christians in the first world, they don't buy demons at all. They don't buy demons. They don't buy hell. And that's really a tremendous
Most of them don't even believe in the real presence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you think about that and you start thinking about how Jesus in the Gospels, he's talking about hell a lot. He's talking about demons constantly, almost as much as he's talking about love. But it's all, I want to point out this class difference, right? Remember Jesus's ministry was for very, very poverty-stricken people, right? And his message still sits right at home. His message about demons will sit right at home again in the third world, in lower class aspects, in community of colors. That sits right at home with that. But the intellectual, right? The wealthy just will not buy it at all. And that's interesting to point out that even to this day, Jesus warned us that with wealth, it becomes more challenging to accept his message. And that's a clear example. What is so foreign to the first world is very easily accepted by those who are poverty stricken.
I remember making it to, well, no, I won't get into that story. That's a story for another time. We get to the point where he actually challenges Dr. James to invite him in.
Yes, that was great.
That was very tense.
Yeah, but that made a lot of other things have sense too. That he tricked him into getting in. And we noticed that's when he started to get the knowledge of him. And I wanted to point out, that jives with Father Amorth, right? Father Amorth, in one of his books, demons don't have complete knowledge like God, but they do have more knowledge, and certain things God allows them to know in the future and what have you. And there was a story, right? So this young priest came in with Father Amorth, and God told him to take this young priest. He didn't want to take the young priest because he knew the young priest didn't believe in demons, but he took the young priest in. And he was standing in the back in disbelief when Father Amorth was doing an exorcism. And the demon says, "You don't believe in me, but you believe in this girl, and you're having sex with this girl." And he went into the positions he likes and all this kind of stuff. So the demon had all this knowledge to publicly humiliate him. He ran out the door. But Father Amorth never saw the young priest again. He ran out the door. But you see,
now he's living in Schenectady somewhere.
So anyway, that really jives with a lot that demons will have this crazy knowledge, and they'll use it to scare and intimidate and to shock.
Yeah,
that was very good.
The thing I kept thinking throughout the movie, as good as I thought it was that you're never going to be able to demonstrate how much smarter a demon is than you, and how much evil there is in a demon, and how much hatred. And they did a real good job of showing it. But as smart as he came off in the movie and the dialogue, I'm sitting there going, wow, this is like a 10th, a 100th of what is potentially there in a demon.
I got to disagree with you a little bit, because what I got out of it, and I thought this was just as awful as anything I've seen in any other movie of this sort. I mean, I've never been around demons that I'm aware of. I don't know any exorcists that I'm aware of. I know a few priests. But it was the petty torments that he put the real guy through.
Yeah. The most cool thing in the whole movie was him telling the guard, "Hey, I'm not hungry. Cancel my last meal."
The last meal.
Made me I felt that one really deeply, because you're still trying to hope for the redemption of this host, even though the demon said he's bound for hell today, and you don't know if he is or not. But I felt that last little petty thing. It's just like,
Well, and the fact that he would do evil things and then abandon the body when he would start to get beaten. in the prison.
Oh,
You know,
yeah,
he would,
yeah.
he would allow the other guy to get punished. He probably, just came to it, didn't know what the hell was happening. All of a sudden, the clubs or the fists and the feet are flying. I mean, that he would, that cruelty, that small sort of cruelty was really something that hit me. It wasn't, big torture chambers or you see somebody burning or something like that, or lakes of ice. It was just a small, petty little things. And I'm like, oh, that's just fucking mean. It's just
I agree.
evil.
I agree with you, Mike, that the small petty things were very effective. And in this, conversation about the superiorness of the demons, you kind of think of like a evil teacher, right? Who just is petty, right? They're evil, even though they're intellectually superior to the child. They're just crazy, and they just want to humiliate the kid and abuse the kid, and it's like even though the intellectual superior. And I also think and I know I have to go with Valerius here. It was a challenge. It's really a challenge to kind of capture the demon essence, especially when he's doing a lot of stuff on the nose and dropping a lot good, because part of that intellectual superior, he would have all these lies and just mess everything up, but that would ruin the story, of course. One thing to throw in, what's really good substance was how they view themselves as freedom fighters. I think that was genius, and something you don't really hear a lot, how the demonic world, they see themselves as freedom fighters, and you hear the same kind of chant echoed today, that we're fighting oppression, we're fighting this force, we're not going to be his slaves. That was really clever, really jives with the kind of conservative Christian movie it is, but that's something that I don't think gets enough attention.
Yeah, that always reminds me of Saul Alinsky in his book Rules for Radicals. He dedicated it to Lucifer, the ultimate freedom fighter, and that blows me away that some jerk off is going to say something like that. And you know how many people have read that book and carry that with them, and they think that when they fight against the church and they fight against faith, they fight against a belief in God, that they're fighting against this oppressor.
Yeah,
it just fucking blows me away every time.
Absolutely, yeah. That's the whole thing, to tear it down and to kind of make a new moral order. It's a new moral order. It's not based on Christianity. It's not based on love for the Creator, but it's based on rebelliousness. Makes a virtue out of rebelliousness and chaos.
Well, they also talk about how their ultimate plan is just, they know they can't defeat God, but they can hurt him.
Yeah, by hurting us.
Yeah, they can hurt him by making us sin.
Yeah.
That's the plan. They know that they can't beat him, but they can just keep inflicting, these cuts, metaphorically speaking, to just injure him. And that's where we start to move into the abortion story with his girlfriend, Melanie, and he starts to talk about, can you imagine, what Jesus must be feeling when, you pull this baby out of its mother's womb, and just kill it. Can you imagine the pain that, Christ must go through? He keeps calling him the carpenter, and that was like, we're getting back to the cruelty sort of thing again, the imagery from the dialogue, that is in your own head without it being shown to you.
Yeah.
I think like Bill started to say at the beginning, and he's talking about Moloch and the putting the babies on the, these awful things that I won't even, speak about to give air to, but the way he's describing it, and you're just like, that's 1,000 times more effective than anything that you could show in a film. You couldn't show that in a film. You couldn't. Again,
the imagination becomes part of the filmmaking process instead of depending on CGI and, a white-faced nun going boo, That was scarier than 100 jumps I could name.
That was hard. I had never thought of that before, where he starts talking about Moloch and the sacrifices, and I'm like, what the, that is, that's hell, that would, I'm like, okay, I hadn't thought of that. Okay, that's pretty fucking awful.
That's part of the reason why the press came at this film so hard, because of that message about abortion. They said they came after the filmmakers saying, well, you're using this as a a pulpit to preach against abortion, and he's like, no, we're just telling you what abortion is, and it makes you squirm. It's not because they're being political; they're just saying what it is.
Yeah.
I was very surprised at that part. I was very surprised that it was that um, um, that it really hit the issue head on like that, and knowing that the backlash they would receive, to call abortion a sacrifice to Satan, in these times when we know that the Republican Party has just redid their language, not to call for an end of abortion, and
Yeah.
with the entire world going in the opposite direction, for that kind of scene was really shocking for me, and I haven't seen anything like it.
The idea that, and this is what really got me when especially when I first watched it, and it grabbed me this time. I think, like I said, my third viewing, when he makes the offer to him, you could leave right now. You could leave right now and get on the phone and stop her. You could change your whole life right here. You could make it. You could go home and tell her you made a mistake, and you're sorry, and you want to have this baby, and you could, like, he offers. He's trying. I think he knows he's not going to do it, but he's actually telling him what the right path would be. You can make your whole life about sacrificial love. That would be,
because he knows the deed was already done by the time he got out and got on the phone with his girlfriend. It was already done. So he was taunting. Even if he accepted that offer, that would be super cruel for him to believe that he could change it when in fact it was already done.
I didn't get that impression. I got the impression that, like, if he had moved at that instant, like, he would have been able, like, if he had run out of the room and said, it's an emergency, it's life or death, I need to make a phone call, he probably would have caught her. In the few minutes that it takes for him to equivocate, is that the word? It's complicated.
Yeah.
That really makes him happy when he says that. He said, that's my man, that kind of thing. That's exactly it. It's complicated. Exactly. This, that, and the other. I had the impression that it was those few minutes that he had wasted. And yeah, it was too late by then. I literally had the opinion that, even though he didn't know it, he was offering him the path that he knew he wasn't going to take. He knew he wasn't going to take it. But
very ballsy. Just the very ballsy part of that film. Definitely a Christian film with a lot of teeth that didn't shy away from controversy.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the filmmakers is definitely Catholic.
Yeah.
And they had a Catholic priest advising. But yeah, it sort of vacillated between evangelical and Catholic viewpoints, I thought. Not a theology expert, but it did, the movie didn't feel 100% Catholic on its points.
Yeah, I think the theology behind the film was very solid, and there's a lot of agreement with the theology between the two, and I think the part with the priest was a really big, when just the demon being scared of the priest, that was really big. I would almost want to call it a concession to the liturgical churches, but I think primarily the audience and the culture was really kind of built towards an evangelical, or Catholics with kind of like an evangelical culture to them, which would really kind of be the types of Catholics who really believe in demons. They have a very similar culture to evangelicals.
I don't know if the trads are like that, but definitely the charismatics are.
Yes, I stand. Yes, you're correct.
I'm not trying to correct you. I'm just
I was speaking more of the charismatic, and that overlap that really kind of is influenced by Protestant culture. The trads are an anomaly within themselves.
Okay.
So, I mean, you get the doctor trying to, buoy up his, brace himself up. We've never been freer. I don't know what you're talking about. We're not in bad, society is not in bad shape. good and evil, or social constructs. Literacy is up. We're getting rid of hate speech, and the guy's just looking at him like, you're a fucking idiot.
Yep.
The demon's just looking at him like I don't even need to be here. You're just kind of taking care of it yourself. Like, why am I here? I could just go back, to wherever it was that I was. But that is a prominent, and especially I guess we're seeing it in an election season, but I mean, if you've been paying attention for the past 8 years, that is a very prominent attitude.
Yes.
Life
at that point, I thought the casting was really, really good, because the guy playing the psychiatrist is best known for his role in Entourage, playing a theatrical agent who's a complete idiot and just a dope who screws everything up all the time and makes bad choices all the time, named Adam Davies. And I was sitting there going, that's fucking Adam Davies. That's just saying dumb stuff.
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, I once read a book called The Strange Death of Europe, and it was written by a guy, Douglas Murray. And if you know who Douglas Murray is, he's a very prominent social commentator, I guess you could call him. British guy, very conservative. He's a gay man, but this, super conservative dude. And he talked about how at the beginning of the 21st century, the Cold War was over, and Europe sort of all at the same time, they sort of just kind of cast off Christianity. Because they said that they really no longer needed it. The Cold War was over. The Second World War was over. We were, done. It was the dawn of a new millennium. And what they were going to put in its place were human rights. They were going to put human rights in place of Christianity, not understanding that the roots of Western human rights are sort of rooted in Judeo-Christian values. So what they essentially did was pull their own spiritual backbones out.
Yep.
They pulled their own spinal columns out. Then they proceeded to open the borders to the Middle East and North Africa and South Asia, where people have a very strong backbone in terms of their religious convictions and beliefs. And, you can see it today. Europe is sort of being overrun. And this guy, with his 6.3 million and his PhD, feels that and the world itself is on solid footing, not understanding the entire time that, he's sort of circling the drain to hell. And just blissfully unaware. He's not, playing with the Ouija board. He's not, throwing bones or, doing any sort of voodoo or, black magic or, anything like that. He's just a regular old civilian who thinks that, life is peachy and, not understanding, what a red zone he's really in. And, the demon talks about that, how, man in this era today wants to be his own God. It's, and I think you're right, Mike. What little I know about, reading about demonology or, books, a few books here and there about possession, you would never get this sort of forthright
Yes.
disclosure, of what the plan is.
Right?
Yeah.
It's theology in an interesting way. And I'm nitpicking for the sake of nitpicking, but it makes a nice movie. But I would be remiss if I didn't point out that the demon's really on the nose with a lot of things,
But at the same time, does it sound wrong? It doesn't feel wrong. Like when you hear it, you're like, that's bullshit. If the demon's talking about, he's a Harry Potter fan or something, you're like, what the fuck is this? This is bullshit. But what he's saying, when I hear it, it rings true, inside me.
Yeah. It's very, very sound theology, really a lot of interesting aspects to it. It touches on the world. And you mentioned this really different idea of opposite versions of human history, right? Where religious people or decent people would say, you know, evil is growing greater and greater and greater, and we're on the cusp of something very dangerous, while a anti-Christian person might say, this is, we're progressing better. Steven Pinker from Harvard wrote a book about the less violence in the world today. There's less violence in the world today. There's more equity in the world today.
Is that
So
Enlightenment Now? Enlightenment Now?
This one was called the lesser angels, our brighter angels. But he doesn't believe in free will either. So but the point is that we have two very different ideas of what human history is happening, and so they kind of touch on that very well.
It's interesting. It's damn interesting. Let me ask you this: what did you guys think of the warden? It's in my imagination to do yeah, exactly. The warden's kind of a scumbag. I got the impression that the warden was very much a scumbag. He sort of leverages the doctor into, signing off. He just wants him dead so he can go. And you're just like, okay, there are no good people in this movie.
For me, why do we need the warden? The warden is cartoony. He's two-dimensional. He's in public. He's plotting a plan to kill this inmate with him. Like, no professional in the world. And it's just, there's a lot of problems with that. But it fits this genre, I believe. It fits on the nose. Warden's bad. He's a baddie. He's there to, kind of be an extension of temptation, and to be fulfilled to really make this kind of dark impression on the doctor.
Can I ask you, do you guys know anybody? Wait, hold on. Let me ask this question. Do you guys know anybody that works like in the correction system?
I have, yeah.
I do.
They're not always the nicest people.
No.
They suck, I guess.
Yeah, they kind of do. You have to be a particular type of person to do that kind of job. Like, you figure, most people would last about a week. But I know a couple career corrections officers, and I'm like, yeah, you're not really a great. Yeah, you're not. Yeah, you're not.
It's a horrible job in the world.
That direction.
It's a horrible job in the world, and the darkness rubs off on you.
Yeah,
it's very hard to not let, if you work in rough neighborhoods, it's very tough not to let that embody you.
Yeah.
If the warden is there for any sort of literary purpose, I think he represents the world weary and the cynical, the people who can turn a blind eye to blatant evils that are happening and go, yeah, it's the way of the world. I picked up on him as being sort of like
the working man.
No, not the working man, just a sort of resigned to watching all this evil over and over again, because he lives with it every day, and he's just sort of built up this the hard outer coating of, he's not going to feel anything. He's not going to think about it. He's just there to go, yeah, sign off on the guy. Let's get rid of him.
One more dead scumbag, and that's, I think you're absolutely right. But again, for me, another example of just being a little bit too on the nose, especially when he's pressuring the doctor to say, yeah, let's just kill him because, it's going to look bad for you if you let him live. It's a little bit too much. So warden.
Well, because we find out that for whatever reason, the demon has been, well, not for whatever reason, but through whatever methodology, the demon has been stalking, Dr. James. And he's like, well, one day this guy's going to get out and he's going to be waiting at the foot of your bed. And, then you're going to regret not signing off here. And at that point, the doctor is sufficiently frightened. He suspects that, something is not, the stereotypical situation here. And he ends up signing off. And again, we get to that part, with the Last Supper, the last meal, and it's just that's an awful scene.
It was effective.
Yeah.
Are we going to get to the very last scene now?
Well, what did you think? Because, they go through with the execution, and then the acceptance of the inhabitants sort of comes back to bite him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's trying to fight off this demon who can now manipulate him at will, and he's trying to say no to this deal that he wants to cut him, and
he's
he
on the other
to do everything that I offered the carpenter.
Yeah, and that's interesting too, because what the books never told you was that what my master offered wasn't real, or that he couldn't deliver on it. It just says he said no, and all those things that he was offered, I'm offering you. Mm-hmm. And he goes, trust me, you're no carpenter. It's extremely well written. Mm-hmm. There's not too much fat on this script. Maybe a little bit, a few, like you said with the warden, this, that, or the other. It's better than a hell of a lot of horror movies that we cover. Well, not that we cover.
I believe you. I
cover the better ones.
Let me jump in real quick on that last point about that. That was an interesting theological point that the movie made, that the devil did have the right to give him all of those things. It wasn't a lie, and that's something that the theologian that I work with actually stresses, is that when God gives a gift, he never takes it back. It's for eternal. And God gave this world to Lucifer, and Lucifer is the prince of this world, and he doesn't give that back. He doesn't take that back. So Lucifer still has domain over the earth and does have the power to do these things and to give Christ all those kingdoms. Which is interesting, theological tangent. But yeah, they were really interesting that they stressed that.
I think it's a great movie. I think it's a great film.
So there's two things I think the two other parts of this movie. One, the death scene. You kind of mentioned the death scene, which I thought was a bit long. I'm not sure why we needed to be that long. That's just me.
To exacerbate the cruelty.
Can we talk about Glenn Beck popping in at the
Yeah. Well, say what you're going to say.
Are we not going to mention that because you like the movie so much? We're going to pretend like that didn't happen.
No, that took me right out of the film.
All right.
Yeah,
First off,
come on.
Why doesn't Glenn Beck dress like a normal person? Number one. I mean, the glasses are weird. His clothes. Why can't he just dress like a normal person? Number two, I mean, it was very condescending, very forced. A cameo should have been a cameo. Did they stretch that thing out for what? I mean, it was by far the weakest part of the film. Yeah. Or is there something I missed there? Maybe I was so turned off. There was something nice that I missed. Did you pick up anything that was good in that scene?
When I first saw it, I was under the impression that, I don't know, and maybe I still feel it a little bit. I really hadn't thought about it. It felt like it was the only scene in the film that had a little bit of warmth, and a little bit of humanity and a little bit of gentleness.
Okay.
That's it.
That's what I got out of it, because there's none of that
quality. Right?
He's back among the living.
You're right. They needed the redeeming quality. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, is Glenn Beck my favorite person? No. But I mean, I did get that impression that Dr. James is back among the living again. Mm-hmm. He's on. If he's not redeemed, he's on the path.
Well, he says he's agnostic at that point, and he's struggling
he'll get there. Yeah.
That Glenn Beck plays up in it. I mean, that's, kind of what Glenn Beck does. That's his shtick. So it's sort of it's not Glenn Beck in the book, right? It's just,
I don't know. I hope not.
I didn't read the book, so help me out with this. But
yeah, I would be surprised if that scene's even in it. But yeah, I mean, I want to say, I don't want to trash Glenn Beck. I appreciate every conservative religious guy, good ideas, what have you. But just being inserted in the movie, and he comes off a little bit condescending. But I do agree with you. They really needed some redeeming qualities and to flesh out the character. This movie could not have ended execution and with that blip of the demon in the new body. It couldn't end like that. It would lose
especially with the real Edward Wayne Brady screaming at the doctor to tell them the truth as he's being strapped into the chair. Because is that the worst of the three murders?
No.
It seems you don't think so.
it's just the one that you're set up to feel worse about because you've been with
absolutely right
with this person the whole time. In the grand scheme of things, no, the abortion's the worst of the three murders.
Right. Good point. And we don't know the mom, right? We didn't watch the mom crying. That she could have been the sweetest person in the room, right?
Yeah,
so,
Melanie.
Yeah, good point, Billy.
Okay. Fair enough. It's still fucking awful.
Yeah.
But wasn't the most
he's lying and watching this guy be electrocuted to death on what he knows is a lie.
Yep.
And he's just going to sit there and watch it happen when he's the only person in the room that has the power to stop it.
Yeah, and he knows it, and
he lets it happen anyway.
But that's part of why it was so long. It was that you're feeling what he's feeling, and it's just driving the point home. Even though we already got the point, maybe some people in the audience didn't.
You're right.
To get that point across.
You're right. Some people need that horse beaten up a few times.
I mean, at that point when the execution's happening, I'd already resolved to go to confession 3 different times. Watching this movie, so I'm not the one that.
I saw this movie, Father. I swear it was terrible.
Yeah. Just let me live till Saturday, Lord. Just
please,
let me live till Saturday.
Well, I was lucky. I found out that after, because I go to the Sunday Mass, and like usually confession is like Saturday at like 3:00 in the afternoon. I'm like, what kind of, there's Spanish confession right after the Sunday Mass, so I just kind of sneak in there and just get it done in English. And it's funny because the last one that I was with, I was there. It was Bill will know, Father Franklin.
Oh, yeah.
And the first thing that Father Franklin says before he enters, because we're all waiting for him, and he says it in Spanish, but I asked what the translation, and he goes, okay, what did he say? He goes, no stories. No stories. All right. Because I remember going to maybe 2 or 3 before that or something, and I'm in line, and it's Saturday. I went on a Saturday, and I hear this lady going off in there. And with our Father Anthony, and I hear her yelling about her insurance. And I'm like, I'm getting the fuck out of this line. I'm going over here, because if I'm next, Father's going to tell me I'm going straight to fucking Gehenna. That's it. He's going to be so frustrated by the time I get in there. So I just went over to the other line and got it done. But it'll definitely make you want to get to that reconciliation there. The next available opportunity.
2:30 to 2:45 every other Saturday. Convenient as hell.
This was a film that was also offered. They invited other, and like you said, it's controversial because you don't want to have everybody in the pews looking at you like you're crazy. But they were asking other parishes to screen it.
Mm-hmm.
Speak to your church office. Would you be willing? Would you be willing to do a screening of the film? Maybe lead some discussion afterwards. And when this first dropped, I think I was like a year in the church, so I didn't feel confident enough at all to to approach, and to ask that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's worthwhile for anyone to watch. Let alone a Christian, a Catholic, or an evangelical, or
and for people to talk about it, right? And for people to talk about it in groups, and people to kind of grapple with these ideas, especially people with these ideas are new to.
Yes.
Young people, I really think about young people, how this probably really could impact people in their 20s. Really hit home a lot.
Because you just don't think about the things you do when you're in your 20s.
Yeah,
your teens and 20s, you just do stuff. And sometimes you can do stuff that is pretty hard to come back from. What's that saying? What doesn't kill you can still fuck you up really bad. So yeah, it's a very cautionary tale. It's a very cautionary tale.
And again, that demons and hell is so removed from our daily consciousness, and so removed from especially first world society, that something like this just jars you into another framework, right? Into a deeper reality. And it can be, a lot of psychological stress involved with that, to grapple with this.
A lot of people in our day and age, especially like you said, the middle class and upper middle class, they're playing games with it now. It's they find it so ridiculous, the concept of demons, that they're playing with it. All the pentagram tattoos and the upside down crosses and the whole I'm being edgy, I'm goth, and it's a real dangerous thing, I think.
I
Even
agree.
all those outward expressions are silly, but at the same time, it's forming a consciousness where it's so easy to just
And isn't it peculiar with all these different forms of silliness? That's the one they latch onto,
right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, it's funny because this is my 235th episode. Mostly have been horror films. So I've had some interactions with people in the quote unquote horror community. They fit that profile to a T. And yet none of them would cover this film or watch it. They'd watch the grisliest, torture pointy kind of thing that I just won't even bother to screen. I don't want to hear about it, this, that, and the other. I try to cover movies that have a good story, that are scary. I'm not into gore for gore's sake.
Yeah.
This part 37, this, Freddy, Jason, whatever. I try to cover interesting films. Yeah. But none of them would talk about this. None of them that with the exception of Eric, who's going to watch it. I'm going to get Eric to watch it. Bill knows who I'm talking about. He's like, oh yeah, all right, I'll check it out, no problem. But yeah, they all play that. It's like they're playing a part. It's like they have a role to play. That's got to be edgy, and you got to have black lipstick, and you're like, what are you doing, man?
They think they're offending us, people of faith and people who believe in God, and they do it to own us or to get under our skin, and it doesn't really bother me. I just look at it and I'm like, that's the St. Peter's cross, by the way. That always blows them away, that they're wearing the upside down cross, and you're like, oh, I've been to St. Peter's Cathedral too. That's awesome. Yeah, he was he didn't feel worthy to die in the way Jesus did. They don't know any of that. Yeah. But they think that they're being edgy and freaking out the straights, when it really is idiots. Look at it as if it's pathetic.
Right, and I would expect that kind of behavior from teenagers, but from people in their 40s and 50s, that is really, really pathetic to need that sort of thing. But let me tell you this: C.S. Lewis, Screw Tape Letters. I'm sure you both know it well. He says there's two different ways, unhealthy ways that people react to devils. One is to not give them any time or attention and disbelieve them altogether. The other one's to have an unnatural obsession with them. And we've just talked about them both. When I was in the Roman Catholic Seminary, my professors, I'll never forget that he gave this professor, he goes, yes, there are demons. The demon of ignorance, the demon of poverty, the demon of injustice, the demon of greed. There was no such thing as demons. If you believed in demons, they were going to make things problematic for you. Right. And that's, that's the Roman Catholic Seminary. Right. So, and that's something. And then you have this example of, the horror genre, the people who kind of, do the horror thing, and that's a part of their identity. And it's like an FU rebellious thing. And then you also have, people who are just fixated, a lot of them with some mental illnesses, who just kind of fill their head with demon videos day in and day out. And there's a lot of money being made by people making demon videos. The hits are unbelievable.
Really? I'm glad not to play any part in that. I don't know anything about it. It's funny because I can't remember where I heard it from. I can't remember if it was a YouTube video or maybe it was something I heard in a homily. And somebody was saying that, a lot of people nowadays are more afraid of the devil than they are of God.
Oh, that's a good line.
They're more afraid of the devil nowadays than they are of God. And it's just, it's ridiculous. People just have these obsessions now. Like you were saying, it's an obsession with evil and the devil and these sorts of things.
And on that topic, remember that Saint Michael, not God, is
Yeah,
the rival of Lucifer.
yeah,
Saint
my
Michael,
confirmation saint.
just another angel, just
Yep.
another angel that had a beginning and no end, just like us. We have a beginning, and we're eternal beings as well. But God was for outside and beyond all time. So his rival doesn't even come close to God. But yet he likes to convince us that it's some kind of diabolical warfare between God and him.
All right. Is there anything in this film that we have not discussed that one of you would like to, bring forward?
Just that they set it up for a
Oh,
sequel.
wait, there is one thing. Yeah, the last scene.
Yeah.
Ugh, why did they do that? Why did they do
That was cheesy. It seemed like an add-on, but
Yeah.
it was like inevitable and cliche. Oh, the homeless person over there is talking to me because that's where Nefarious is now. Okay, I get it.
Well, it's either that or he's going to be harassed for the rest of his life.
There is that.
He could just be under spiritual attack for the rest of his life. That's his fate now.
Yeah, I didn't pick up that they were going with the sequel, but yeah. I guess when you're really emotionally invested in a movie, and I think these filmmakers were, it seems normal that they would want to keep that open for a sequel because it seems like it was. But like Mike reports, the American Werewolf, that this was, they had a religious experience, spiritual experience. They've been being attacked, so that's understandable. But yeah, it was a little corny.
They were very clear. Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
I was going to switch it to something else.
Go ahead.
What do you think about the scene with the chain around his neck? I thought that kind of came out of left field, and I wonder why the guards just kind of allowed that when he was choking Dr. James with his chain. Did you find that effective?
No, that
wasn't
an action anomaly.
Yeah, just a quick action scene. I wasn't under the impression that he was going to die. I wasn't really concerned. Oh my God, this is where it's going to end.
Yeah.
This would be a great play. Wouldn't it? Just a two-man play.
It would.
It would really fit well, and then you could take out some of these action things and stuff that they put in for the movie genre. It would be just a really great thing just to watch.
It would probably be a far more effective stage production.
And scarier, perhaps.
Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit of Dorff in the third Exorcist movie, where he and George C. Scott are just in that cell having the conversation. It's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
Mm-mm.
All right. Let's get to the part in the stream where we rate the film. This channel has a rating system that goes from 0 to 5 up by halves. So 0, 0.5, 1, 1.5, all the way to 5. So 0, for example, would be I'd rather have a ponytail grow all the way down to my ankles than watch this movie again, all the way to 5, which is this is the journey, this is the destination, this is why I watch films in the first place. Michael, what would you give Nefarious?
I have a deep respect for this film and for the content and for what these people are trying to do and the product that they're doing. But my own taste had a hard time with a lot of the on the nose and a lot of the beating the dead horse at times. So I am compelled to give it a 4.
A 4. Okay, a 4. All right, that sounds fair. Belarius, still scamming the system with your work computer. What's going on? What do you got for Nefarious?
It's definitely the kind of movie that I enjoy most. Really good performances of really good dialogue covering really interesting topics. There were some things that were a little bit cliche. I don't know that I would say it's a movie that I would watch again. Probably not. I'm glad that I got to see it. I'm glad that this stream came up so that I could have an excuse to seek it out and watch it, because I know it went on and off my radar like that. But yeah, I'm in with Michael. It's kind of not the greatest possession movie ever, but it did hit some good marks, so I'll give it a 4.
Okay, a 4. I'm going to go with a 4.
Okay.
I think that it's, when I go to 4, because I say that, movies have sort of 3 categories. I say at the bottom, it's like a pyramid. At the bottom, there's content, which is just schlock, junk, whatever. In the middle, you have entertainment. And then at the very top, you have cinema. So I would say that this is moving towards the top of the entertainment category. It's very intelligent. It's a very smart script. I think there were very good performances. I didn't have the sort of, I didn't really mind the on the nose stuff. I don't think that it got into the cinema level, though, unless we start to talk about the abortion scene, which I think was the best scene in the movie, where Sean Patrick Flannery is just going off about what actually happens and the machinations of the devil. That scene where he starts to talk about what the real purpose of everything is, because he wants this guy to be his apostle. We didn't get back to that often enough. That's the reason he's revealing all these things, because he wants this guy to be his sort of understudy. And then maybe, if he goes down into hell, maybe he can get a job down there or something like that. I don't know. But I thought that the ending, the final scene, really screwed things up. I didn't mind Glenn Beck. But even if you had put, like, if he had just ended at Glenn Beck, I might have considered a 4.5. I might have.
Yeah.
I might have, because like I said, I thought that was the only warmth that there was in the film. You got, because Glenn Beck is a human being. And you got the sense that there was some humanity there and some outreach and some comfort, that sort of thing. But yeah, I'll keep it at a 4 and be comfortable with it. I would recommend it to anybody. Again, this film is streaming right now on Tubi. I think you should watch it. If you're going to watch a horror movie, you should watch this. Yeah. If you could watch a Dracula movie for the 400th time, or whatever thing you've watched again for the the 12th time, you can take an hour and 45 minutes and watch something that's actually good, and do yourself a favor. So yeah. All right. Mike, plug something. What do you got going on with the channel? I'll put the link to the channel in the description.
Okay, I have a YouTube channel called Divine Will Era, and it features Father Joseph Iannuzzi. He is an exorcist, and he was trained by Father Amorth, and he's also a Vatican theologian. Check it out for good, solid Catholic theology, and also commentary on a lot of interesting topics.
I spent a little time on that channel doing movie reviews until I realized, and I think you pointed out to me, that I kept picking martyrdom films, and I was getting really depressed by the end of the 3rd film.
There's some good ones.
Beckett, and I was picking good films. I was like Beckett, and I can't remember, it was like Paul, like the Apostle of Christ, and then I think the Fatima one was the last one, which I think the other guy didn't like or something. He wanted to watch the original one. But, all right, Bill, do you got anything going on these days besides
Not
working
really.
more work?
I don't make content, so I got nothing to plug. I am looking for a new band. The guitarist that we've been playing with for the last few months is moving to North Carolina in September. So once again, my bands are falling apart. So if you're at the Jersey Shore, you want to play some Americana, surf music, anything but the typical old rock and roll, get a hold of me through Mike. And yeah, that's that.
Yeah, I would actually pay someone not to play old-time rock and roll.
Next one of these, I'm going to suggest the Padre Pio movie.
Oh.
So I need an excuse to seek that one out and watch it.
The Italian one?
The one with
Shia?
Yeah, with Shia LaBeouf.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
Is it
neither
good?
have I. I'm interested. I don't know.
Okay.
Interested in it, and I think it would be a good discussion amongst us.
All right. Well, let's do that. All right. I'll tell you what. We're going to sign off right now. My thanks to Mike and to Valerius. I was wondering why your camera's screwed up. It's not the same computer. All right.
Right.
We will be back on Thursday. Eric and I will be here, and we'll be continuing the summer of Stephen King as we get into one of our favorites of the summer, Richard Bachman's Thinner.
Oh, nice.
Which is, one of my favorite Bachman stories. Okay, everybody, guys, stick around, you two. We will see you all in the next video. All right, take care, everyone. God bless you. Take care. Good night.